You are listening to the Hostage to the Devil podcast. Some listeners may find this content disturbing.
There are four signs, important signs. They are asked in the ritual for exorcism that the exorcist should look for. These signs is an extraordinary strength, the knowledge of different languages, above all ancient languages like Latin, Greek, or Aramaic, and the fear of sacred things. And the last one would be the knowledge of hidden or very far away things. I think that the three first can be invented. I can fake an extraordinary force. I can talk to you in Latin or Greek because I remember it from school. I can fake that I'm afraid of the crucifix. I can fake it. But what I cannot invent or cannot fake is to know things that really happen in your life that is just absolutely impossible for me to know, or to know that something is being said right now or happening right now and it's true. This is impossible for a human being to know it. So for me, from the four signs that the ritual asks to the exorcist to look over for, so extraordinary strength, the knowledge of languages, and the fear of sacred things, and the knowledge of hidden things, that for me, the most important one would be this one. If you have a person that knows your life, or just as you told me, that you have a priest telling you that during an exorcism, the person told this priest things about his life that it was just impossible for this possessed person to know, we can only understand that there is a supernatural knowledge there. So is somebody outside the person telling you these things? So this would be the devil. Obviously, it can be God if God wants. This is the prophecy, the spirit of prophecy, for example, like saints that we have in the church, like Father Pio de Pietrelcina, Saint Padre Pio, or the Cure of Arts, Saint John Maria Vianney. He also had this gift of prophecy and knowing the life of the persons, but not because he knew, but because God gave this knowledge to him. So when you have this experience of having somebody knowing hidden things or faraway things, for me is the most evident sign that a person would be possessed.
The possessed and sometimes the oppressed individuals would have this hidden knowledge of faraway things. Some people say knowledge of the future, which is not true. Spirits, and the church teaches both angels and devils and demons do not know the future. Only God knows the future. But they can have pretty good guesses about the future. But their knowledge, which is called in Latin latra, and usually translated as hidden knowledge, it's absolutely a sign that you're dealing with something paranormal. And psychics can tap into that realm too, perhaps in unsavory ways. The Satanist woman that I referred to, for instance, knew all kinds of things. She knew how my mother died, which was ovarian cancer. But she didn't know just how my mother died. She knew how about 10 other people's parents had died. Now, unless she was, you have to use your common sense. Unless people think she was researching hospital records and stuff, it staggers the mind to believe that she didn't know that through hidden knowledge. A more dramatic example of her hidden knowledge was, she told me once that she had something which the parapsychologists called remote viewing. She could see things at a distance. And she clearly believed it was not some ability of the human mind, but that it was conveyed to her by demonic intelligence. And she said to me once, and I decided to challenge her on it, she said, well, I can see The Exorcist. I said, what are you talking about? You can see The Exorcist right now? She says, yes. Now, I had the guy's cell phone, the chief exorcist on her case, whom she was talking about, was a good friend of mine. So I said, well, describe what he's doing now. She says he's walking along the beach near his house, and he's saying his breviary. And I said, what is he dressed in? She said he has a blue windbreaker and he has khaki pants on. I call her by the pseudonym Julia. Of course, I would never reveal anybody's name. And I said to Julia, I said, well, listen, I was tempted to say Miss Smarty Pants. I said, listen, Julia, I'm going to call him. So I called him. He called himself by a pseudonym, Father A. So I said, Father A, who was also one of the founding members of the International Association of Exorcists, by the way, very little known. I said, Father A, what are you doing at the moment? And he said, well, I'm usually at home, but I decided to, take a walk along the beach. And I said, what are you doing? I said, I'm saying the divine office. I'm saying my prayers. And I said, and what are you dressed in? So he said, Rich, I know what's going on. Yeah. So I said, what? He said, you're talking to Julia, right? And I said, yes, just answer the question. He said, well, I have a windbreaker on and I have my khakis on. He was actually an ex-military guy. And I said, what color is the windbreaker? And he said, blue. And he said to me, I'll bet you she told you all that, right? She's amazing, isn't she? I told you she was amazing. And it was by far the most dramatic case of possession that I've ever encountered. And that even these two experienced exorcists who work with her, it was, in their view, the most flamboyant possession they ever witnessed, and they were incredibly experienced.
I had a dream that something was going to happen in some hotel room, and it's very detailed. It's in the book. It's very detailed, but I was being attacked by a demon, and a lot happened. And I remember telling Harmony, this was the night before we were leaving for Florida, actually. And she laughed, and she goes, you better bring your holy water. So I threw it in a bag. I said, you're right. So when we get to this hotel, a beautiful resort in Orlando, we were taking one of my daughters for her sweet 16. She wanted to go away instead of a party. These kids, it's amazing. They want these big lavish things. So we go to this nice resort, and the room that the girls are in, the adjoining room for the first 2 nights is haunted without a doubt. They're experiencing crazy activity. They wake up one morning and there's a huge handprint on a wall with 4 fingers. And, I went into it, I investigated, I questioned the heck out of them. And, it was legit as far as they were concerned. And then the next night, one of the girls hears banging as they're sleeping. And she can look across the room in the mirror and she sees a dark figure slamming the bathroom door. All the lights are off except the bathroom, and it's a sliding smoked glass window. And she sees a black figure and she thinks it's one of the girls, maybe stuck. She goes to get up and she looks over and sees all the girls sleeping. So she panics, wakes up the other girl. They start screaming. My wife goes running in. I look at everything and we figure out there's something going on. Now the girls don't want to stay in that room anymore. So now I'm really looking at it. I'm taking pictures. I'm going in there. I'm looking around, and I can't believe what's going on. I want to go on a nice vacation, and this is the last thing I'm thinking is going to happen. I couldn't believe it. So, long story short, I'm sitting downstairs about midnight the next night. The girls are going for a swim, and they come over. They see me sitting there, and I'm just relaxing. Harmony's sleeping, and they said, "We're not sleeping in that room. We're going to sleep on your floor. We're not going in there." and they're FaceTiming their parents who I know. One of them's a NYPD detective, and it's embarrassing. They're joking, what am I going to say? So I make a decision. The girls go to the pool. I text my daughter. I said, don't come up to the room. I said, I'm going to go up and do a blessing. Obviously this goes against a lot what we're trained and taught about, but what are you going to do in that situation? And, I've been in the field, the streets for a very long time, being a medic, being a cop, doing evangelism ministry at that time for 12, 13 years. So I go up and I actually go up and do a blessing. I go through the Catholic faith. I do a Catholic blessing and nothing happens. There's no crazy Hollywood activity. There's nothing happening. And, for the next 2 nights, 3 nights, nothing happened. The girls actually slept in a room, no activity, and everything calmed down. When I came home, I kind of let it go. I said, we talked about it, but I'm going through the family film, the reel, and I find that I took a picture in their room by accident. I don't know when I took it at that point, and it showed a spirit on the film, clear as day. I go show it to a few people who know a lot more than I do, and they said, this is bad. So I said, holy cow. So I called the hotel, and this was a big thing because how do you call what are you going to say? And I kind of, they were kind of giving me the runaround. And I said, listen, I'm not looking for a free trip here. I'm telling you, this is what's going on. I caught this in here. This is what happened to the girls. And the other part of the story is the maid stopped coming by the room. So they would bring sheets and water to our room, but it would never go into the girls' room. So I let them know. I had a meeting with the director of operations of this big hotel. It's a very big chain. And at the end of it, she believed me, and they end up shutting the room down to guests. So I knew something was going on there. After that happened, I made the decision, and a lot happened within that. I started interviewing my wife, all the girls on their own, just like you would, at the precinct. And I started building a case file. Next thing I know, the case file is like this high. And I said, I feel like, I'm being called into this. I really am getting an understanding of what's happening. And that's where it took off because word of mouth went through the precinct. At that point, I started going to police officers' homes, and that's how that started. That was the first real case, I would say. There was an incident that happened in the precinct a couple of years later, I would say, maybe a year and a half later, where something happened with two cops up in the bunk room. And, they came and got me. It turned into a big thing. And it got around the precinct. And the higher ups actually brought me in on an overnight to go bless the precinct. I never spoke about it. I didn't say much, but it got around. And what's interesting is, so I would say the next week, when I remember this was pretty funny, that one of the cops who was publicly making fun of this the whole time, and he was doing it in front of, the groups of people. And I said to him, I said, listen, you're going to keep making fun until, you need me one night. And no joke, a week later, a cop calls me over and says, listen, go talk to him. And I said, why? Just go talk to him. And he was loud in front of everybody. He goes, I believe you. He goes, I believe you now. And I said, what happened? He goes, I was in my room last night. He lives alone. And he goes, I felt somebody jumping on my bed. I couldn't move my feet. And the bed was moving. And when I got up, he cleared the house, like a cop would. He thought there was an intruder. He goes, I don't see anything. I go back to bed. And 2 minutes later, all the bottles I had stored on top of my refrigerator come smashing down in the kitchen. And he wanted me to do a whole blessing. And we talked about what happened. But, that when that happened, everybody was very cautious. And even the other cops who, would go up to other people and say, listen, you shouldn't make fun of this. This is no joke. Now, what happened is with that precinct, somebody leaked it to the Daily News in 2021, I think it was. It was a year later. And when that came out, I didn't even do any interview in that article. When that came out, everybody knew about it. Everybody. It was the whole the whole department and everybody else. And the next thing I knew, I even had, I had higher up people calling me to their homes in upstate New York and everywhere, bosses, supervisors, because they were having issues they couldn't talk to anybody about. So it was really interesting how God works. And the next thing I knew, I'm doing more work in, the NYPD than anywhere at that point.
Yeah, I'm not trying to promote. I'm just saying that
Do it,
in
man.
this
Promote.
book, this story is included in this book as the chapter's called The Muffin Man.
The Muffin Man.
Very scary. Just the name of the Muffin Man is very scary. So wait, I gotta get some. Hold on.
Yeah.
We got there. The woman's hysterically crying. She's only, I mean, she was only 20, 21 years old. Very young, young woman. She had a 3-year-old son, and a boyfriend she lived with. And her boyfriend was working. He worked nights, and her 3-year-old was staying with her mom because she had so many problems in her house. The mother gave her a break a lot and took the kid. So she's frantically trying to tell us, like, oh my God, I saw this shadow figure in my house. I can't take it anymore. Just rapid fire telling us the story. And I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. I said, let's get her stuff out of the car and go upstairs and get your story. So it's documented on film. So we get up to, she was on the second or third floor apartment of a 3-family house. And we went up the stairs, and the door wouldn't open. Like the knob would go back and forth, but it wouldn't move forward. It's like, I don't know what's going on. So Rick like pushed the door open like the police, bang. And we heard this big bang. And this exercise bike was thrown across the room onto the floor. And she goes, that exercise bike was like 8 feet away when I left this room. She was, so looking at it, it looked like the exercise bike's handle might have been wedged underneath the handle, so we couldn't push it forward. So we don't know if she's just making up stories or she could have done that herself, whatever. But I remember we went around to the back door to say, maybe she set this up and went out the back door. But the back door had a deadbolt on it, and she even said, I didn't even take the key with me. And also there was a fire. I don't know how long ago the fire was, but they had the access to the ground like boarded off because of damage. So it's kind of curious now. And then so I said, let's sit down at the dining room table with we had the old-fashioned tape recorder and video recorder on her, and the whole we said, let's start from day one. What started? How would you move in? When this stuff started happening? And she, as she's telling us a story, she keeps pointing at random directions, like, "Oh my God, don't you see it? Don't you see it? Like, see what?" She goes, "It's a shadow." I'm like, I don't see any shadow. And she goes, "I said, what's it look like?" She goes, "It's like a man outside of the wall, standing. Don't you see it?" I'm like, "You don't see anything." So we honestly, you get older, you get a little wiser. But back then, we weren't believing her. And she said, it went okay. She went into the bedroom. So we're like, okay, let's go into the bedroom and go see the thing. So me and Rick and her went down the hallway, looking into the bedroom. Yeah, we see something. Now we see something. And like she said, it looked like a man standing, a shadow standing, inside the room. It's only a couple feet from the corner, and it looked like it was a regular slim 5'9" male figure. And we're even adjusting turning the lights on and off, trying to see if it's a play of the shadows, moving the door back and forth, saying, and it's not changing. And so I would say, what a terrible investigator am I, because I left my camera, both of them, in the other room, interviewing her, and now here's this right here. Might never see this, again in our lives. So I said, Rick, should I go back and get my video camera? This would be amazing footage. Nobody would ever believe it. And he's like, I don't know. I was like, I didn't want to go get the camera. If it disappears, I'll never see this again. And I just want to kind of take it in, experience it. So he says, well, let's go try to touch it. That's a good idea. So we took like a step and a half forward. And as we were taking a step forward, the thing like turned like this and stepped into the wall. The way it looks like it would have walked through the wall and into the hallway on the other side. So I went around the hallway to see if it came out, but it didn't. So then after that, we got our interview, and then we, investigated that house for a couple of weeks. It was a great story.
What I want to know is, where did the Muffin Man title come from?
That's a great question. This woman, she had a 3-year-old boy. Oh, do I have the sneakers for you? I wasn't prepared. Um, One of the complaints she had was when she'd frequently bake stuff. So she was, I'd make cookies, and then she put them on top of the refrigerator, and even told us I push them in the back because I don't even want my kids to know that they're up there. And he's 3; he's not climbing counters, stealing, but just in case. So she said they'd go shopping or do whatever they're doing, and then they come back and she'd go to get the cookies, and they're gone. Like the plates there, she's such a little doily in there. The Everything's there but the cookies. Then she, like 3 days later, she'd go into the closet to get the vacuum when she's cleaning the house, and she'd see the cookies all stacked in the closet. It's kind of it's weird, but it's kind of scary if they don't belong there. Then she made muffins, a whole plate of muffins, and um, same thing. It would they disappeared. She accused her boyfriend. She's like, "Did you eat the muffins?" She goes, "Well, why would I steal your muffins?" So then they had some friends over in the kitchen one night, and their little 3-year-old boy was playing by himself in the living room, and he comes into the room trembling, like, he's upset. And the mom says, "What's the matter?" And he leads her into the living room and is pointing behind the couch, and he's trembling. He's scared, and he's pointing the back of the couch, and all the muffins that were missing were stacked in the back of the couch. Which we found out later that stacking is like a kind of fairly common thing, especially in like poltergeist like cases. Um, and then I'm trying to figure out how. And she never had any experiences before. Like there's no history of her or any of the family members having. It seemed like to be the apartment or the house. So she moved out a month later, but the they're gonna Ed and Lorraine had it scheduled. A priest came and blessed the whole house um, before they left. And another interesting thing about that house is when they were moving all their stuff out, they left the boys' sneakers, which are the little LA Gear ones that light up. And of course, because Ed and Lorraine collected stuff from their houses, I was looking at them like, yeah, I'm like those. And because the story about them was, they said they'd be, especially when it was nighttime, they'd start blinking while they're just sitting on the floor. And so they scared me. It seems like they were mocking me. And just they go back and forth, and then I wouldn't look, they wouldn't light up. Then it, the corner of my eye, they kept blinking. So I said, well, I don't know how they work. Maybe it's vibrations from the floor or a bad battery or something. She's like, well, maybe, but she goes, my mother. Then her mother was there for the interviews, and the mother said, no, you don't understand. She goes, I saw those sneakers walk across the boy's room when I was in the hallway. Those sneakers walked right across her grandson's room in the dark, lit up without any feet in them. So I was like, of course, can I have those? She's like, yes. So the Muffin Man was one of the names they gave the shadow figure.
So what happens now when somebody is experiencing some maybe poltergeist activity or an infestation or maybe oppression, demonic oppression, whatever it is, they perceive it to be. What is who is their point of call now? Is it the church still? Is it communities, paranormal groups? Where do people go?
Well, like I said back then, and the Warrens were the only people I knew that were. I'm sure there were other people doing it, but it's the only people I knew that were doing it. So a lot of people always said how everything they investigated was demonic, whether you believe in demonic or not. You understand? If you're the only people doing this sort of thing, you're getting dozens of phone calls each week, and you're only going to go to the worst of the worst. That kids are involved, or somebody it's going to be violent, or so. Yeah, you got a lot of the worst cases. That's what you got. And back to your question.
Now, what happens now if someone's
Oh, yeah, thank you. I know a lot of people have their own techniques of doing stuff, but as far as the church goes, we don't have a Bishop McKenna or Malachi Martin anymore to that was not reluctant to get involved and help people. And not that I know of, maybe there's some out there, but we were really spoiled back then because they trusted us, and if we said we thought something might be legitimate, they would set up an exorcism.
So how would you have described Father Martin and Bishop McKenna back in the day? Then were they rogue? Were they underground?
Yeah,
Did they break away from the church? You know,
that's what it kind of
especially
made them cooler in a way because, um, and as far as integrity goes, they were just getting attacked by everyone for trying to do the right thing.
It was a large home, basically, in a Victorian area of Belfast that was quite salubrious in its era. But my parents purchased it in 1979 and moved in 1980. And they purchased it off the World Evangelical Crusade because they got an absolute bargain on it, and it was the best house they could get for the money. And where it was located at the time, well, was the Murder Mile, it was known as. A lot of atrocities had happened in and around within a mile of the property. And a lot of people just didn't want to buy properties in North Belfast at that time. You know, it was the victim of the Troubles. It was the victim of bombings in the Belfast Blitz in 1941. And a lot of the very wealthy people were moving out, and they got their hands on this amazing house. So they spent a lot of time renovating it, and they never really noticed too much strange activity going on until much later on. But one thing I remember saying to my dad today, did you notice anything strange about the house? And he said one of the things was that the pets in the house always found the attic room quite strange. They would take panic attacks, they would soil themselves, they would run out of the room. And shortly after my parents purchased the house, they were doing work on the roof, and our family dog walked up there, freaked out, and jumped out a skylight window and fell right through the outhouse building. Now, the dog survived, but that was one of the first weird things that happened. Like, animals just did not like the upper floor of the house, which was a bit odd. So the other thing was my parents were dealing with the grief of losing their baby daughter. And so they didn't really have time to think about odd things or strange things happening in the house. They were just did this big, huge house to look after. And yeah, that was that. They just were moving on with life, and the Troubles was happening all around them. So they didn't really have time to think of the paranormal. And it wasn't really a hot topic at the time either. So then myself and my twin brother came along, and I suppose I only really started noticing strange things happening in the house when we were in our teenage years, like mid-teenage years. And it started off with things like you would hear noises and you could explain things like that. Then taps would turn on their own, glasses began to smash on their own, things would move in front of you. And that sort of progressed from there. I remember distinctively smelling this tobacco on one of the landings in the house, and I thought, where did that come from? Because no one in our household smoked, and it was like a strange smell. It wasn't cigarettes. It was like old tobacco smoke, like a pipe. And I remember bringing my mum up to the landing to say, "Can you smell this?" And she could smell it too, and it was only in a certain little corner of the landing. And then there would be other times where you would smell what I would describe as like, you know, when you strike a match and then it has that after smell, of burning. You could smell that around this particular landing in the house, which again was quite odd. So things began to progress from there, and what I think really kicked it off was I had a Ouija board made for a film studies project when I was about the age of 15, and we were going to use this as a prop in the film. So I did a bit of acting, still do a bit of acting, and I got cast in this film in Scotland. And I remember going away and leaving this Ouija board in my mum's bedroom because for whatever reason, I knew it was a bit creepy and I didn't want to really use it. I just had it there as a prop. But I rang home from Scotland when I was filming, and my mum said to me all these strange things had been happening in the house. So it seems like this Ouija board did something. It maybe triggered something or woke something in the house. That particular night, my mum was in her room, and she'd moved the Ouija board out of the room because she was having new carpet put down the next day. So the only thing that was in the room was her bed, really. all the furniture had been removed, and she'd put down bank statements at the end of her bed that she wanted to go through. Um, and upon returning to the room, she noticed that the bank statements had disappeared, they'd been moved, and on her bed was a black bin bag that she didn't put there. So it's really weird and irrational. Like, she just couldn't understand. She thought someone was playing a joke on her, but there was no one else in the house. And so basically, later on that night, she was going through a magazine, and inside the magazine, her bank statements had been placed. So it was just strange things like that, like that she couldn't really explain. Like, why would someone do that? You know, there's no real reason for that. It's not even funny. It's not even really scary. It's just weird. So that was sort of the start of it. And then my mum woke up one night to hear someone howling, and she thought it was coming from outside in the street. So she opened up her window to look out in case someone was hurt, and saw this spectre staring in at her from the bedroom window. And she completely freaked out, screamed, fell back into her bed, and was, I think, trying to convince herself that it wasn't real. So she didn't want to scare us. And on that, I think it was the night after, I think it was around Christmas time, because I remember the Christmas tree was up. She decided that she would tell us what had happened. But the night, let me see, what night was it? It was either the same night or the night after. I can't really remember because we were quite young at the time. But my brother and I woke up. We used to sleep in the attic room, the twins, ourselves, and we heard this sound again ourselves, like as if someone was hurt or moaning. And it was like quite loud and it's quite scary. So the lights were out in the room, and we were really quite petrified because it was getting louder and louder and louder. And then it sounded like it was almost on the skylight of the house, like above our beds. So we both kind of pretended that we were asleep because we were so terrified. And eventually one of us was brave enough to reach out and turn on the light, and the sound just stopped. It was really quite bizarre. And that was really when it all started to kick off. We first got in touch with Lorraine Warren, I think it was around 2003, when Ed was still alive. He was quite sick at the time, so Lorraine wasn't actually able to come over to Ireland at that stage. But she was speaking with us over the phone. What had happened was the hauntings, or the incidents, began to escalate. It started around 2001, and it began to escalate, and it was going on for a few years, and it was getting quite frightening. And I was actually in my father's house in the south in Dublin, and I saw a documentary about Lorraine Warren, and I had no idea who she was. However, I went onto their website and just sent them an email just asking for advice about what we should do. And quite interestingly, like, they did respond fairly quickly within a day or so, and said, look, Lorraine would be interested in speaking to you over the phone. So I did, and her advice was that she said that, look, is there any what did she say? Is there any occult items in the house? And I said, well, actually, yes, we had a Ouija board made. We don't use it. It's never been used, but it's in the house. And she said it doesn't matter. She says those particular items can attract spirits or awaken something. And she says it could even be pretending to be a human spirit. So she said her advice was to actually bury the Ouija board with a crucifix, and to get her out of the house. That would be the first step. And she said at her end, she would engage with the church and pray for us, and to see how it went from there. So my twin brother and I went, there's like a small forest near where we live, and we took the Ouija board and got rid of it in the forest. Strangely enough, one of my brother's friends said to him, actually, I would like to have that Ouija board. And I didn't want to give it to him because of the bad luck that it had brought to us. And I said to my brother, look, if you want to give it to him, you go and get it. I'm not going anywhere near it. It's terrifying. But my brother went back up to get it, and I had gone. It was someone else had found it or taken it, and God knows where it is now. But um, that was quite strange that someone had taken it. I don't know why you'd want to take it or dig it up out of the ground, but someone must have seen it.
where would you even start by making a Ouija board? Did you just type in Google, like, how do you make a Ouija board? Or, I mean, how did you get in? I know it's for a film prop, but I mean, how do you even, did you just do your own research and design it yourself?
Well, it was made by a friend of mine who was a carpenter. It seems like bad luck followed it,
Yeah.
you know, and I just didn't want it anywhere near the house. But once the Ouija board was removed, Lorraine actually did stay in touch with us. We would have emailed or telephoned, and back in those days, it was long distance phone calls, so they were expensive.
Yeah.
She did also recommend that we get a priest out to bless the house. And when we were younger, a priest had come out to bless the house from the parish, and we didn't really know why he was there. I think it was following the incident where my mum saw that thing at the bedroom window. But we got another priest out to bless the house again, and I don't think it really made any difference. We were still experiencing things like it sounded like someone was running up the stairs, or what else would happen? Yeah, there were so many incidents that happened. Like my brother was holding a glass in his hand one night and the glass just exploded. Um, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of other things. The howling, the breathing, the apparitions. It was really quite weird. There's so many experiences that happened. My younger brother heard thudding in the attic one night when he was in the house on his own, and he went up to see what was going on. Bearing in mind it's a detached house, we don't have neighbours. And he said he walked up and it sounded like someone had collapsed on the floor in front of him, but he couldn't see anything. And it absolutely terrified him. So he just ran out of the house. So that it wasn't calming down. So by about 2009, yeah, I think it was 2009, we were back in touch with Lorraine. Ed Warren had actually passed away at this stage. And we were speaking to her on the phone, and she agreed to come over from America to do a proper investigation. So she came over for about 4 days, I think. And she came with Tony Spera, her son-in-law, who is still alive and is married to her daughter, Julie. I think you've met him.
Yeah, he's been on the podcast, yeah.
Oh, has he? Or I must listen to that episode. Yeah. So they came and they did an investigation. There was actually a reporter here as well documenting what was happening. And Lorraine's conclusions basically were from the investigation that there was 2 human spirits in the house. But she said that one of the human spirits was quite a horrible person in their lifetime. And he'd done some very atrocious things which would have put him in league with the demonic. And she says his hatred has carried on and he's not happy about you being in the property. She said that the other spirit was a female spirit, and she was like an older lady who had died in the property, and she was very protective of us and loved us and loved all the joy. And so she said it was quite strange because there was 2 spirits in the house that were haunting us, but in 2 very different ways.
Yeah.
And that certainly was what it felt like living there, because we have lots of great memories in the house. The house has a very protective energy in it in some rooms. Particularly in the front left-hand living room, there's a very lovely positive vibe in there. And sometimes the door will just open up and my mum says, "Oh, that's Miss Bigger coming in." And and then there's other rooms in the house that have this really oppressive energy. So it would be interesting to see if you could find anything.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, I am not a paranormal investigator. I've just like accidentally stumbled into this world, which I'm a spiritual person. So yeah, it'd be fascinating to come and have a look around. Obviously, if your mum's happy with that, we'll come over. We did the Sharon Rectory in Donegal last year, 2 years ago, actually. So yeah, we're open to come, the team and I, to come over and have a little look around. I'm particularly interested in the garden spot. I would like to, yeah. Just yeah. my gut's telling me to go straight to that garden spot. Hopefully there's no barbecue on top of it, but yeah, no.
I'm sure it wouldn't be a problem. My other brother lives in the house as well. I mean,
All right, great.
so yeah, I mean, there's no problem. It would be good to have a look. I don't know if I'd want to conjure anything up and start things again because it has
No.
been quite quiet.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want any Ouija boards or seances or things like that. So we try to avoid things like that now because of what happened in the past. But strangely, more recently, it's been very quiet. I think whatever Lorraine did must have worked in some way to cleanse the house. But it didn't mean that everything just stopped. There was the odd thing here and there. And in fact, there's a funny thing that happened about the year Lorraine came. I think she was there in November. And by December, I got this DVD and there was a documentary on it about Lorraine Warren because I was fascinated by the whole thing. And it was Christmas Day. And my brothers and I were watching this documentary about Lorraine. Well, she featured in it. And the first time that she appeared on the screen, the DVD player stopped and the tray came out. And I thought my brothers were having a joke or someone had the remote control. But actually, it was sitting right on the coffee table. So I thought, that is so strange. Whatever is in this house really did not like Lorraine Warren.
Yeah. Just obviously, I'm here to ask the questions that the audience will want to ask. Getting Lorraine Warren over, then obviously she arrived with Tony. I mean, does she charge a fee? Do you pay for her travel, accommodation? How does it work from like if Joe Bloggs was to get somebody like Lorraine Warren?
Yeah, I think that she was more inclined to do it because she was familiar with us and she knew about the situation. And when we reached out to her again, we thought, well, yes, she didn't charge a set fee, but she said she'd need some expenses covered. So like, what we did was we hosted a lecture, one of their famous lectures in the Hilton Hotel, and charged people in to hear, her evidence. And Tony and her both presented it and gave anecdotal experience and also photographic evidence and things that they've captured over the years. It was really fascinating. And Lorraine also demonstrated some of her clairvoyant experiences as well, or clairvoyant abilities, which was really amazing. And she had members of the audience in tears. She also met with a local family, I'll not say their name, but on a missing persons case and gave them some information. So it was a really fascinating experience, but that particular lecture helped fund their expenses and their accommodation while they were here. And Lorraine was amazing.
It's good to know, yeah. It's good to know because a lot of critics of the Warrens and their line of work will just see them as absolute fraudsters and charging money and making a lot of money from people who need the help. So it's nice to hear from the horse's mouth that when you were in trouble, she came over and all she asked for was expenses, and he did a very clever way of recouping that money and getting that money for her. So no, it's just good information to tell the audience of Lorraine Warren and how she was as a person. And let's go back to Lorraine Warren. So she arrives at the house. What's she like? What is the first thing she wants to do?
So the funny thing was Lorraine is, as they depict her in the film, she's dressed in tartan and, she has her hair up and she, even for her age, she was quite glamorous. I would say that she was becoming a little bit forgetful at that stage, but she was full of energy. And the first thing she did was we brought her into the dining room. And she met with a reporter and a team of people. There was people that wanted to interview her. So we allowed that to happen. And we did want to have the experience documented in case anything happened, for proof. So she didn't bring any scientific equipment. I think when Ed was alive, he was the more science-based side of it. And she was the more clairvoyant side of it. So her experience was more about feeling the space, providing visions of what she could see in the house, what she could see has happened there before. and she walked around every room. She also provided like blessings, and we said prayers. And at one stage she said, "Oh, sweet Holy Father," and it really scared the reporter. But what she was referring to was a picture of the Pope. So I thought it was quite funny. But yeah, she walked around rooms, and initially I was a bit skeptical, thinking, well, anyone could say this, anyone could make this up. But it was when she reached the attic room and pointed out the location where my brother and I had seen this particular entity, and she pointed to it and she says, "I'm finding it really oppressive here. It's hard to breathe." And she said that this is where he is. This is the most haunted location in your house. And I was like, well, I would agree. So I found that really interesting. She also picked up an energy at my mother's bedroom window, which again was where she'd seen a spectre. The back living room, she was able to pick up like energy in there as well. And then other rooms, she said that these rooms are completely fine. There's no issue. And again, we would agree with her on those. So again, her vibes were picking up on the vibes that we had. So that was sort of affirming for us. Had Ed not been so ill originally, they may have come over earlier and done more of a scientific investigation, using equipment. But the particular night that she was there, nothing happened, other than what she was reporting back on psychic vibes and things like that. Had she been there longer, maybe something would happen. But that's quite typical in a haunted house. You could go for a year and nothing could happen. Or you could have a week where you have something happening quite regularly. So it's not unusual for something like that to happen. If something was happening every single day, every day of the year, you'd literally just move out.
Thanks for listening to our podcast, and remember about our Facebook page where you can find out more information about our documentary. If you have some spare cash, then please buy us a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com/HTTD podcast to help us keep this podcast going. And it would only be right to finish with the main man himself.
Malachi, who gets possessed?
Well, you see, we have tried in the past, Michael, and I'm speaking about a career stretching over 35 years. We have tried in the past to create the profile of the possessable person, so to speak. And we have found that there's no norm. For instance, neither sex, nor age, nor education, nor color, nor race, nor riches or poorness, or intellectual degrees.
Crosses all boundaries.
It's at random, apparently random. And of course it's random because it depends on the free will of everybody. And therefore it's haphazard. There's no law. There's no rule at all. And some people are possessed willingly. They set out to be possessed by Satan for one reason or another. Or others are possessed because they want something which leads them into possession. People approach it in a different way. We have a new, since I started this in the 60s, there's a new phenomenon we have noticed, more and more young people coming forward, 30-somethings, 40-somethings, because we're all old men, but there are 30s, 70s, 40s, coming forward and saying, look, I made a pact when I was 25, when I was 32, when I was 23, and I want to get rid of it now. How do I get rid of it? It's a very frightening thing to find so many of them.